Vanakkam. Hello friends. When you look in the mirror, you see not just a face but a museum. The dramatic opening lines of the book, The Horse, the Wheel and Language, published by the noted anthropologist David W. Anthony, best describes who we are. We carry with us a genetic footprint of our parents, our grandparents and great-grandparents, and in the case of us, the Tamil people, this goes back to 65,000 years ago. Amazing, isn't it? To understand the reality of this statement, we need to recollect some of the genetic science that we would have learned during our school days. Each of us have within us 23 pairs of chromosomes, half coming from the mother and half coming from the father. And the 23rd pair of chromosomes determine the sex of the child that is born, where XX is female and XY is male. Now, the Y chromosome always follows a paternal lineage being passed from a father to son, whereas while most of the genetic coding is within the cell nuclei of these 23 chromosomes, the one exemption is the mitochondrial DNA that is passed on from a mother to every child, both boy and girl. And this is called the powerhouse of the cell, as this mitochondrial DNA performs a very vital function of converting the chemical energy from food into a form of energy that the cells can use. The maternal lineage of a population can be traced back by studying the mutation or copying errors that occur in the mtDNA or mitochondrial DNA. And today, genetic scientists are able to trace back and create maps of the grouping and dispersal of population through times using the mutations that occur in mtDNA. Archaeogenetics is a specialization which is gaining great importance in archaeology in distribution patterns of population around the world that are established through genetic evidence corroborating with the human fossil finds that are happening every now and then in different parts of the globe. Remember the Rakhigarhi DNA that was discovered in the Indus Valley Harappan outpost in Haryana, dated to 4,500 years ago. The archaeogenetic maps precisely tally with the global climatic patterns. We know that the earth goes through a climatic phase of glacial and interglacial periods, where a glacial period is when the world freezes over and interglacial is when the climate becomes warm and waters start to flow. 65,000 years ago, when the out of Africa migration was happening, the world was in an interglacial period. And by the time of 35,000 years ago, it again descended into a glacial period that was prolonged till about 11,700 years ago, when the earth again became greener and warmer, and this period is known as the Holocene, in which we live now. Till the last glacial period of around 35,000 years ago, the human beings all over the world were hunter-gatherers, and they were using Paleolithic tools, and by that time they had progressed to using microlithic tools, which are very small stone implements probably used to create spears and sharpened arrowheads. And in the South Asian part of the world, the earliest microlithic tools are excavated in the Madhya Pradesh area of Mehtakeri, dating back to 45,000 years ago, and the earliest available human fossils are found in Sri Lanka in the Fahayan caves of the Kaludara district, dated to about 35,000 years ago. And these fossils are of the modern human beings who are our ancestors, the Homo sapien, remember Latin wise man. Now, when these migrants came into different parts of the world, the earlier Homo species that habitated the place, such as the Paleolithic man in Atharambakam in Chengalpattu district, they were all driven to extinction owing to a combination of factors which we will not go into here. But it would suffice to say that our ancestors are the Homo sapiens, And a very interesting study was published in the year 2009 by Michael Petraglia et al., titled Population and Environmental Deterioration Corresponding with Microlithic Tool Innovation in South Asia from 35,000 years ago. This study established that between 45,000 and 20,000 years ago, most of humanity that populated Mother Earth lived in South Asia, and the evidence is thought of reflecting an explosion of population in the subcontinent that is unparalleled elsewhere. Hence, the population problem of India started way back. Again, in the year 2009, another very interesting paper was published by David Reich, the genetic scientist from Harvard Medical School, together with K. Thangaraj and Lalji Singh from the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Hyderabad, titled Reconstructing Indian Population History. They found that today's Indian population has two very divergent groups, ANI and ASI, and there is a layer of population that is common to the whole of India called the first Indians, and we, the ancestral South Indians, are direct descendants of these first Indians. Hence, we are also called ancient ancestral South Indian population, whereas the first Indians in the north mixed with the Western Eurasians who came in and became ANI or ancestral North Indians. As first Indians, it has been found that the mitochondrial DNA that we carry has a 70 to 90% residue of the original migrants who came out of Africa. And in the case of the hill tribes that today we call the scheduled tribes living in isolated areas such as the Paliyar tribes living in Parani, the mitochondrial DNA accounts for 95% of their maternal lineage. Now, what this actually means that 70 to 90%, and in the case of the Paliyar tribe, 95% of our maternal lineage can be traced back to a woman, a mother who came out of Africa all those 65,000 years ago. So, archaeogenetics today has established that we have been living in the southern part of peninsular India for tens of thousands of years together. It's like we came, we saw, and we settled and populated the place. Why? Because of the affable climate and the abundant natural resources. And the Holocene period itself overlapped with what is known as the Neolithic Stone Age, that is the New Stone Age, where new stone implements such as the stone sickle with wooden handles for harvesting crops were being invented. From hunter-gatherers, people had become pastoral herders, and the increased numbers of people and cattle was putting a lot of pressure on the scarce food resources. And as they say, necessity was and is the mother of invention, and agriculture was born. Archaeobotany is a very interesting field of archaeology where by studying a plant, archaeobotanists are able to decipher whether they are wild strands of wheat or domestic strands of wheat, and through this they have helped establish how agricultural experiments happened independently in the Fertile Crescent of Iran, in the Indian subcontinent, as well as in far off China. Remember, in the IVC episodes we saw of Mehergarh, northernmost outpost of the IVC, where agricultural experiments happened as early as 7000 BCE. It is also interesting to note, while in the Mehergarh regions, in the domestication of plants, we see wheat and barley being cultivated. Similar agricultural experiments were also happening in the Gangetic Plain and in the Sant Kabir district in Uttar Pradesh, in a region known as Lahura Deva. Agricultural experiments show that rice was being cultivated. And the population of the Indus Valley itself was established as a genetic admixture of the first Indians with Iranian farmers from the Zagros mountainous regions. Now, these Iranian farmers were the earliest people who domesticated goats from around 7900 BCE, and genetics has established the direction of migration itself from Iran into the Indus Valley. We also saw how with the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, these populations shifted to the south and the east of India. Now comes the question of language. With the Indus script itself yet being undeciphered, we saw how Proto-Elamite was being considered as one of the mother languages for the Proto-Dravidian language family, something which Tony Joseph touches upon in his Early Indians, a book that is a must read to understand the genetic makeup of the population. And here it is opined that these Zagros farmers who came into the Indus brought their language with them, which then got mixed with the Harappan languages and came down to us. Until date, Proto-Elamite itself has not been accepted by any linguist as the mother language. Why? As a language, Elamite itself died out 3000 years ago and has not left behind sufficient roots to establish this hypothesis. While we have been in these regions for tens and thousands of years, it is but basic common sense that we must have developed a form of communication, a language, if not written through at least oral means, and that kind of a language known as the Dravidian language family, as we saw in earlier episodes, has been found to spread all over India, the north, central and southern regions, and there are many scholars who attest to the theory that these Dravidian languages were found all over India for a very long time. For example, Franklin Southworth, the very noted linguist from the University of Pennsylvania, who specialized in South Asian languages, very clearly mentions how the languages in Sindh, Gujarat and Maharashtra, and especially Marathi that is being spoken today in West Central India, carries a very strong substratum of Dravidian languages. So, the hypothesis could be that a Dravidian language, in our case, maybe we can call it Proto-Tamil, existed here, and since the first Indians formed the base population of the Indus, went there, and after the civilization declined, came back here. Now, to establish our hypothesis that Proto-Tamil is the mother language, we have to look to far off Australia. During the original out of Africa migration, a group of people migrated through the Indian subcontinent. They either took a sub-Himalayan route or the coastal route and landed in Australia about 60,000 years ago. We are talking about the Australian Aborigines, and in their day-to-day language, they use a lot of Tamil words. And Dr. Ramamurthy, an oncologist who specializes in educating the Aboriginal population in Australia, and he is from Namakkal and received the 2015 Pride of Service Award from the Australian government, shows how the Australian Aborigines show a special affinity towards Indian, that to Tamilians, and many words in their daily language such as town for Nagaram, Mangai for lady, Ange, Inge for here and there. There is a huge list which shows that there is some sort of strong connect between the Tamil people and that of the Aborigines. Now, it would be preposterous to think that Mother Tamil is 60,000 years old and the Aborigines picked up the language when they migrated through the sea route into Australia itself all those 60,000 years ago. Again, supported by archaeogenetics, a very interesting study was published in the year 2013 by Irina Pugak et al. The genome-wide data substantiate Holocene gene flow from India to Australia. A genetic signal indicative of a substantial gene flow from the Indian subcontinent into Australia that happened precisely 4,230 years ago. This was a one-way migration, and the gene pool indicated a strong connect with the hill tribes of Kurumbas and Chenchos, Dravidian speaking tribes, and we know that these kind of migrations happen very slowly. Why? Because people walked and they had to hunt, eat, rest and then walk. So, it would have taken 1000 to 2000 years from the time they left the shores of the Indian peninsula to reach Australia itself, meaning that the language that they were carrying, Mother Tamil, should have flourished 6500 years ago, which exactly tallies with the results of the Bayesian phylogenetic study that we saw in a previous episode. So, while Proto-Tamil is time and again established to have been flourishing here for around 6,000, 7,000 years, and till the Indus script is deciphered, we wouldn't know parts of the puzzle for sure. From the Indus up to the Australian Aborigines, the spreading of the Tamil language through the movement of the Tamil people, one is really astounded by the vision of our forefathers who sang all those 2000 years ago in Sangam literature, Kaniyan Poongundranar, Yadum Ure Yavarum Kelir, the world is ours and all people are our brethren. Today, this is being attested to by archaeogenetics. More about this in the next episode. Vanakkam.